What it is, y'all, it is your old boy Pilk, and I'm coming back today with more Danmachi. And today we're going to be talking about foe number 1 in Familia Rush. If you're having problems getting scores in this particular fight right here is capable of absolutely insane scores. I'm going to show you the team that I'm using, and I will emphasize my team is probably not the team that can achieve top marks. Number 1, I don't have the 20% assists. I just simply don't. I would love to say I did. I would love to say I pulled on those banners. But unfortunately, I just didn't get lucky on those banners. So, this is the team that I'm going to be using. And yes, you will note there's a couple of kind of holes in this team and maybe things that could definitely be improved. But right now I'm achieving scores somewhere about 75 to 80 million, depending entirely upon RNG and a few other general functions. But we've seen these teams before. This team is absolutely good, and we'll also cover some of like the just general pitfalls in this team and probably holes that are problems that I'm specifically having. Let's go ahead and get in here. Turn 1's pretty straightforward. Obviously, we're using Lean A for her 33% of gauge charge and her counter and critical buff. That's going to be really important for us. That right there. Now, Bell is going to use skill 1 because that's going to be his buff stack and physical resist down 40%. Aisha is going to have her buff stack and her water resist down 40%. The downside to this is if you actually pay attention to that buff, she also does a negative 40% strength and magic debuff, and that is going to hurt a little bit, and I'll kind of show you why. I wish I had a way around that at the moment, but I have not discovered a way to resolve that yet, but I am working on it because honestly, well, the problem is I really kind of can't. I got to have her buff here, and so I'm in a bit of a loss when it comes to that at the moment. But my other unit here is Aphrodite. Now, Aphrodite is a magic unit. Even though she's water, she's kind of at a bit of a disadvantage. So I'm looking for a better unit, but unfortunately for my bin, I really don't have anybody that I, right off the top of my head, could use here. Obviously, we want to use either Thunder. Thunder and Dark really have the lowest, I guess, defenses. I say basically, they're minus 50%, whereas water's minus 20%, but we know the water team is nuts, so that's why we're using this. Now, she has a 35% AoE attack, but she also does something really interesting here, and we'll cover that on turn 2. But that's mainly why we're using her. Normally, we would sack her, but I'll explain why I'm using Winnie, and I'll also explain why this is the wrong option, but we'll get to that here in just a moment. Now, actually, this is a really valid point. Notice, before I bring Winnie in, notice I'm taking 0 damage from my foe. That's kind of that 40% debuff that I was talking about with Aisha. And I have taken armor completely off my team. Now, it's probably just a problem with being this early in Familia Rush. You know, by the time we get a little further along, that's actually going to be resolved, obviously. But for these early fights, I'm not taking enough damage to do any counters. And counters count big time here. So unfortunately, I'm not countering. I'm not doing any of that, so I'm just not getting the scores I would like. But I digress. Let's get into it. Winnie, I'm using this skill only because that single target debuff. Any kind of counter we get is going to be single target damage, and that debuff is going to help a lot. Obviously, we're using skill 2 for both Aisha and Belle here, and that's just their general buff stack. Nothing unusual there. Now, here's an interesting one. This skill right here... Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's still Aisha. We're going to talk about what we're going to be doing here with... There we go. This is what I'm looking at, okay? The status debuff minus 2 turns. This is going to be super duper handy later on in the match. Remember this skill and the number 1 reason we're using this skill. And I do think I have somebody better actually for this, and I'm going to try that out. But for now, do make note of this. This is going to be really, really, really important. Okay? So we're going to be hitting pretty hard and doing some good damage. But we're still not getting any counters, which is a bad thing. But Winnie's going to leave here. There is some argument to potentially... Oops. Using Winnie's SA skill and getting a little bit of extra damage, but unfortunately, I just don't think I have, especially right now, the ability to do that because our foes aren't going to kill us fast enough. So we're going to bring Haruhime in, and Haruhime is going to basically continue her general buff stack, her 33% SAH charge, and everything else that she does with her skill 2 here on turn 3. Now, everybody else pretty much is going to continue with skill 2 on turn 3. So, nothing out of the ordinary here. But, you guys, this really needs no introduction. We've talked about this Wind Haruhime all over the place. Everybody's pretty much just doing their basic stuff. I don't know why I'm messing with this, but I totally am for no reason whatsoever. But we're going to do skill 2. Basically, the long and the short of it is, and probably one of the biggest downsides to the way it built this team, and the reason why Winnie is a bad decision here is because if you pay attention, you know the numbers, we will actually lose the single target debuff on this turn doing this. So Winnie is kind of wasted. Like I am looking for a better person to stick in that slot. Just for the way my bin is, I haven't found it, but I do think I'm going to swap her in one other unit, and I'll kind of have to test that out. But for now, we're still getting some very respectable scores with some units probably you guys all have. Now, worth noting, all of their debuffs are gone, so we have to re-implement the debuffs. That's super important. That means all of our units are going to wind up having to do a skill 1, and I'm actually do skill 1 here with Haruhime as well, just to make sure we get that out. So, here we go. Skill 1 across the board. That's going to get all of our debuffs out, and with Haruhime, that's going to give us an even bigger counter rate buff and a few other things. So, that is going to help us out drastically, but once again, I want to emphasize, I'm not yet taking enough damage to really take full advantage of that. It's just basically building the skill flow for later on down the line. So we did take a little bit of damage there. That's kind of nice. But we're not taking full damage. Now, basically, we're going to do skill 3 from this point on with Haruhime up to turn 7. And with everybody else, we're doing skill 2. Notice that we've got the debuffs back in play. But if you'll watch here closely on turn 6, they're going to apply, I'm sorry, turn 5, here at the end of turn 5, they're going to apply a debuff to everybody. So notice that there's a strength and magic debuff on all of my units. I cannot have that. I've got to get rid of that. And that is where that skill 2 with Aphrodite is going to be insanely important. I don't know what I'm changing there or why. But Aphrodite's skill 2 is going to be super important, and you'll notice the strength and magic debuff will be gone at the end of turn 6 here. And it should be a no-brainer as to why that's the case, but here we go. Turn 7, we're going to do a triple SA. Now, there is some argument to be made in a lot of situations where rather than doing the SA with Haruhime as I have it set here, is to doing an SA with your 3 attackers. But in this case, I've actually done the math and I've actually done all the testing. It actually works a little bit better just because she doesn't really get any major buffs with her SA. So I'm going to do my SA with Haruhime, Belle, and Aisha, and it's going to produce the damage that you see. Now, that isn't to say that's the best way to do it. That's the way I've chosen to do it. I know that I am lacking in some of my runs up to about 20 million, if not maybe more damage, in a combination of, you know, not necessarily having the right units, looking at the assists there, or maybe lacking somebody else who I could throw on the backside here. But I am working on that, and I will be bringing, hopefully, be rectifying that here soon enough. I just have to do a little bit more testing with this. But for the sake of this video, I have looked at some scores around, and I kind of feel like, well, this isn't like the top score or the best score you could possibly get. This is a solid score, and this may help some people improve their scores out there, so I wanted to produce that. But I do want to emphasize, first and foremost, that this is not the top score. This is just a good score that you can achieve if you match these units like I pretty much recommended you guys do. So, let's see what Belle does here with his SA. Remember, he's Phantasma Killer. Look at those hits. 3 mil AoE hits. And he doesn't even have the buff that Aisha has. Now, I will emphasize Aisha does not have Phantasma Killer, but let's see what she does, because I honestly don't recollect, even though this is pre-recorded. I honestly just don't remember what she did. Go, girl! 5.5 million AOE, and she doesn't even have the Phantasma Killer skill. So there you guys go. Pretty straightforward stuff, pretty easy stuff. You know, if you just follow the skills there, and you know, maybe even improve on this. Let me know what improvements you've made to maybe the stack or the team, because I do know that sacking Aphrodite would be preferable, and having a physical water, thunder, or even dark unit there. I've heard some arguments to using Epimetheus and other people like that would be preferential, but you got to get rid of those buffs on turn 6, or you're just not going to be producing damage. And in my testing, let's see what we got here. Almost 75 million. So in my testing, if I don't get rid of that buff, I'm struggling to make 50. So you've got to get rid of that buff on turn 6. That is absolutely paramount. And I will say, like I said here, I'm lacking about 20 million damage from what I really could be producing, somewhere between getting counters and having the right assists, and maybe even having a better assist in Aphrodite, or a better adventure in Aphrodite slot. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Like, comment, share all the good stuff, and I'll catch you all on the next one.